Okay, hi, William Painter here, Journey Road Ministries, February 27th. Kind of on the inside of a global pandemic, for which we can be very thankful. I hope you are all safe and sound and well, and not losing hope. That may be the most critical. Is don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. Keep the faith, baby. This is Song and Sermon. I've decided to call it that. Actually, it sounds better calling it Sermon and Song, but that's not the right order. So we're gonna call it Song and Sermon, because that's the way we do it. In any case, this is a song I'm going to do tonight. It's John Prine tune, and it's about how we see things, but we don't necessarily see what's there. And so here we go. We're going to start into it. Far From Me. As the cafe was closing on a warm summer night, Kathy was cleaning the spoons. The radio played the hit parade, and I hummed along with the tune. She asked me to change the station, said the song just drove her insane. But it weren't just the music playing, well, it was me she was trying to blame. And the sky is black and still now, on the hill where the angels sing. Ain't it funny how an old broken bottle looks just like a diamond ring, but it's far, far from me. Well, I leaned on my left leg in the parking lot dirt. Kathy was closing the lights. A June bug flew from the warmth he once knew, and I wished for once I weren't right. Why, we used to laugh together, and we danced to any old song. Oh, well, you know, she still lies with me, but she waits just a second too long. And the sky is black and still now, on the hill where the angels sing. Ain't it funny how an old broken bottle looks just like a diamond ring, but it's far, far from me. Well, I started the engine and I gave it some gas. Kathy was closing her purse. Oh, well, we hadn't gone far in my beat-up old car, and I was prepared for the worst. Will you still see me tomorrow? Well, no, I got too much to do. Oh, well, a question ain't really a question if you know the answer to. And the sky is black and still now, on the hill where the angels sing. Ain't it funny how an old broken bottle looks just like a diamond ring, but it's far, far from me. I'm always tickled when I make it through those things with a minimal amount of detours. Anyway, let me put up this old beat-up guitar, and I'll come back for something hopefully more edifying than bad music. Okay, good music. I'm back. We've been doing these videos for nearly a year now, I think, and I don't know if anybody sees them or pays any attention to them. Maybe they'll be like some kind of weird archive, that 100 years from now someone will come across them and say, what were these people doing? They must have been so alone and speaking into the void. So I'm not alone. Obviously, I have a lovely partner and beautiful son and a very smart daughter. Too smart for her own good. Today is the second Sunday of Lent, and this is the passage today is from Mark 9, 2 through 9, and it is about the transfiguration of Jesus. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a mountain apart by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. And his clothes became a dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him. Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. And as they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen, until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. Thus endeth the gospel. Obviously, this is in anticipation of Jesus' tragic end and his resurrection. I really don't know what to say about things like this. In some ways, I have a lot to say about it. What I don't know what to say about is, it's pretty obvious this was written well after the fact, and people rewrite history, to suit them, to suit their purposes. And I'm not saying these are nefarious purposes. Obviously, the point was to tell a story. But what strikes me most about this passage and why I chose Far From Me is this is where Jesus really reveals himself, is transfigured. It's changed, magically changed. There's no mechanism. He doesn't daub his head in ashes or put on a different robe, or he doesn't tell Peter, hey, Peter, get out of my fancy robe. He doesn't do that. He's transfigured. He's changed. And God says, this is my beloved Son. Listen to him. I don't know how it could be more clear than that. Listen to him. We're walking around and going, gee, I wonder what God wants us to do, It's like, listen to Jesus? It's pretty obvious to me. And Jesus said a lot of things. He told a lot of parables. He told a lot of stories. He spoke in metaphor and he spoke in simile, and he spoke in a way that the people to whom he was speaking understood him. He didn't speak the language of science or logic or rationality. There's very little rational in what Jesus has got to tell us. I suppose you can make a case that says if we all love each other, then it's good for humanity. But you could probably also make a case that if we oppressed, a good, 20, 40% of the population and enslaved them and put them in labor camps, and whereas the rest of the population, the 60%, can live quite well, that's a model. It's a model that some people adhere to. That's not anything to do with Jesus. Jesus didn't say, "Oh, let me work out this model." He said, "I'm telling you what God wants for you, and what God wants for you is to love your neighbor and love God." Okay, and so, but he goes up into this mountain. And this passage fits in a sort of genre of literature where the prophet or the leader that is figured prominently in the story goes up a mountain. You know, anytime somebody's going up a mountain, you know something's going to happen. It's not. I mean, why can't it happen? You know, in the Red Sea. Why couldn't it happen on one of those boats Jesus was always on? Why couldn't it happen outside of Jerusalem where everybody could see it? You know, why does it have to be up on a mountain? Well, in part, when you're up on a mountain, you're alone. Okay, I don't know if you've ever gone up into a mountain. I've not been up. I'm not a mountain climber. I've been up very tall dunes. I've driven up mountains. And what I know is that as you ascend, your perspective of the world changes. And they believe that, you know, that when you go up the mountain, that's where Moses, that's what Moses did. And in fact, not surprisingly, Moses with Elijah, or rather Elijah with Moses, are there and are talking to Jesus. And you know, this has got to just be shocking for the disciples, Peter, James, and John. In fact, you know, James and John are mute in this passage. They don't say a word. You know, they're just, and Jesus was up with Peter, James, and John, except that James and John didn't say anything the whole time. You know they did. It just wasn't relevant to the story. And what does Peter say? You know, Peter, one of the reasons I like the disciples so much is not because of their holiness, because they're like the Keystone Cops. They're like us, you know. We're bumbling, we're fearful, we don't know really. We make a lot of mistakes. We're doubtful. We doubt when people tell us things. We can lose our faith like that. Peter denies Jesus 3 times before the cock crows. I don't know that guy. No, I don't know that guy. Not me. That's somebody else. They are foibles. They are people. They are like us. And as much as we may believe ourselves to be courageous, sometimes we are. Or as much as we believe ourselves to be in the home of the brave, sometimes we are brave. Sometimes we do great things. Human beings are capable of great, great acts. But these disciples don't do great acts. They kind of, as I said, they're like the Keystone Cops. And if this were not such a serious passage, I mean, they'd be like the comedy relief, you know? I mean, you got Jesus, he's all serious, and he's telling people, you know, let me tell you the story of the lost sheep. Let me tell you the story of the camel trying to get through an eye of a needle. And many of these stories that Jesus tells us are disturbing. You know, I mean, if you really listen to Jesus, you know, give unto Caesar the things that are Caesar and give unto God the things that are God. Well, okay. I mean, that's a simple and complicated passage. That's not a joke. It's not funny. It's not even moderately humorous. It's something. Scratch your chin and think about. But these are disciples. I mean, and what does Peter say? Hey, I know. Let's build dwellings for everybody. You know, you know what these are. These are like shrines, right? You know, where Moses and Elijah and Jesus going to have these shrines on this mountain. You know, I mean, I always read this passage and I just laugh because it's like Peter doesn't know what to say, and he says that, and he's like, "Oh, did I just say that?" Because he doesn't know what to say. And they were terrified. Of course, they were terrified. And then God comes and says, This is my son, the beloved. I just love that phrase. Wouldn't it be great to hear that from your parents? And they introduce, here's William Painter, my son, the beloved. They just make you feel so good inside. And then God says, listen to him. He's got this. Listen to him. But the most fascinating element, I think, of this passage, and I think one that is tragically overlooked, is that Jesus says, shh, don't tell anybody. Don't say anything. And then they add the until after the Son of Man is risen from the dead. I kind of doubt he actually said that as they were going down the mountain. Peter was freaked out as it was. You say, well, they're going to kill me and I'm going to rise up from the dead. I can just see Peter thinking, I'm out of here. But the important part is that he said, don't tell anybody. Now, we don't get the disciples' reactions to that, but I know what my reaction would be. Are you kidding me? I'm going to tell everybody. And Jesus would be like, no, you mustn't tell anybody. But we have to tell them. We saw Moses and Elijah, and then God spoke in the heavens, and you were transfigured, and this was an extraordinary. This is news. This is important. We have to spread the news. And Jesus goes, no, you're going to keep quiet about this until much later. Why is it that contemporary pastors can't figure that out? Why can't they, instead of standing on the street corner preaching, and I mean that in a metaphorical sense, why can't they understand that we're not here to talk about transfiguration or Moses or Elijah appearing, okay? That's not what we're here for. We're here on very, very mundane and practical sense, and that is to feed the hungry and clothe the naked and welcome the stranger. I see these mega churches and they're like, yeah, well, we're all about Jesus, and they're just loud and they're obnoxious and they are aggressive in their faith, in expressing their faith to people, and very un-Christ-like. I mean, do you think for a minute that if one of these pastors of a megachurch had gone up onto a mountain with three of his disciples, and then saw Moses, Elijah, and was transfigured, don't you think there'd be like selfies being taken, and there'd be posts all over Facebook and all over Twitter and all over Instagram, right? And that they wouldn't be able to shut up about it. Why would you want to shut up about that? I went up this mountain, and you know what? I was transfigured, and Elijah and Moses talked to me, and I'm not. Don't say anything to anybody about that, because that's not what's relevant. Okay? What's relevant is what we do. And so I chose the song "Far From Me" because we see things. An old broken bottle looks just like a diamond ring, but it's far, far from me. We see things and perceive them as we choose, that makes sense to us and that fits our reality. There's a wonderful, and you should look this up. There's a wonderful video. It's called The Gorilla in the Room, I think. And there's these people. I've done this in a church. I showed the video, and there's these people. You're told, count the number of passes. These people pass a ball to each other, basketball or volleyball or something. They pass this ball around. You're supposed to count the number of passes. And so, as a dutiful, human being, given instructions, you watch, and see, and count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're concentrating and you're counting. And in the middle of all this, a guy in a gorilla suit walks right through the middle of them and walks off stage. And so you ask people, well, how many times do they pass the ball? They'll go, 7 or 8 or 10 or something like that. And then you say, well, did you see the gorilla in the room? And they were like, what? there was a gorilla in the room? And you roll it back and you show them, and now they know what to look for, and they see it. We don't know what we should be looking for half the time. Some of us think that religion makes us safe, and some of us think that religion, faith, makes us secure, and some of us believe that, believing in God and being a good Christian will bring wealth and increase the size of your bank account, will bring you happiness. All those saints that we have, the Catholic, up until the Reformation, there were lots of saints, and they all had terrible endings. They all died violent deaths. Maybe not St. Anselm, or maybe not St. Augustine. But they all, living the life of a Christian is a choice that is a fraught choice. It's not an easy path. It's not. So there was a wonderful essay called The Ascent of Mount Ventoux. It was written by Francesco Petrarca in the 15th century, I believe. You can look it up. Petrarch, Petrarch. The Ascent of Mount Ventoux, Ventous. Mount Ventoux is a real mountain. And it was said that if you ascend Mount Ventoux, that you could see both Italy and France from the summit of Mount Ventoux. And so Petrarch had long desired to ascend this mountain. And the first part of the essay is him choosing his traveling companion. He's kind of a picky guy, He didn't want someone to talk too much or talk too little or walk too fast or walk too slow, and so he settled on his brother, who was in orders. He was a monk. And so Petrarch and his brother begin their ascent. And Petrarch decides, this is kind of hard work, going up a mountain. And so he sees a path that looks like it might be easier. You know where this is going, right? He sees a path that might be easier, and he gets caught in the brambles. He ends up getting lost. He ends up in a village somewhere, and the people have to send him. And finally, he is back on the right path. And when he reaches the summit, there's his brother sitting there. Been sitting there the whole time. And Petrarch opens up a book, and the book he reads is Augustine's Confessions. Now, that's a wonderful story, and people have argued about whether he actually went up Mount Ventoux or not, and it certainly doesn't make one whit of difference whether he did or didn't go. But the point of the story, once again, we got a mountain, climb that mountain. But the point of the story was that taking the easy path is not always the best path to take. And to choose to become a Christian and to choose to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, going up a mountain and not even knowing what you're going to see when you get there, is a difficult choice. It's not an easy choice. A lot of people say, I'm a Christian, I always liked Maya Angelou, God rest her soul. I liked her answer. She said, people always tell me they're a good Christian. And I think, I try awful hard. I'm not sure I'm very good at it yet. It's easy to say, I'm a good Christian. But it's hard, actually, to be a good Christian. I had a meeting with a pastor this week, and I just love the guy. He's just a wonderful, young, enthusiastic man, and he's got a lovely family. And we were talking, we were chatting, and he said, I told him, I said I was having a really hard time because I was angry all the time at people who were so selfish and so self-centered and so indifferent to the sufferings of others, and that I had spent most of my life not believing in an act of evil, and I'd come to question that point of view quite seriously. And that was my perception of our state of affairs. And he came back to me and said, it's just selfishness. That's all it is. It's just people being selfish. And he's right. I mean, when you see it in that light, people are just being selfish. Jesus was never selfish. The one time he took a luxury, they crawled him pretty hard, and he was like, I kind of deserve this, and it's really none of your business. But most of the time, the entirety of the New Testament is about Jesus giving himself to others, to the point of being persecuted and prosecuted and tortured and killed in public in the worst, most painful possible way. Romans were masters at killing human beings. They were a blood culture, and they took it out. Pontius Pilate took it all out on Jesus for everybody to slobber over. There was no win in that. Now, I suppose you could say, well, Jesus was just conning these guys, that don't tell anybody, because it's a secret, and that was a con. But if it was a con, he was a really bad con. I mean, there was no win in it for him. What he didn't want, and what I believe, because I'm only speculating, but I didn't want him. I think what he wanted was he didn't want an emphasis on non-natural or supernatural phenomena to carry his message. He didn't. It's the Son of God. He could have called lightning down. They said, call your God. Have your God save you, and he didn't. He was not willing to conjure up an extra natural event in order to press his message, because his message didn't need it. His message was love God. That's pretty straightforward. You don't need a lot of lightning and incense and to understand that. And love your neighbor. And you don't need waters parting or manna falling from heaven or any of these miracles. You don't need those miracles. He didn't need those miracles. And he didn't want those miracles defining who he was. He healed people. He fed people. He loved people. You can tell some in his interactions with his disciples that he really liked them, And he was a really good guy. So instead of looking at Jesus as some kind of judgmental, vindictive, punitive God, well, that's just an old broken bottle. And it's far, far from you. Instead, you should read what Jesus actually said. You should, listen to him. And listen to his words and do what he says. And don't spend your time talking about how God doesn't like transsexuals or non-binary or queer or gay or lesbian or any of the things that have been painted in the worst possible colors in our society. Just stop it. Just stop that. I tell you what you do. You go in that New Testament and you do everything Jesus tells you to do when it comes to LGBTQ people, okay? You do that. You do what Jesus tells you to do. And you know what you're going to find? Love your neighbor. That's what you're going to find. So any environment, any word, any communication that says, I'm a good Christian and it's against my religion to make me respect LGBTQ people, okay, the second half of that invalidates the first premise of that sentence. They may have a religion, but it isn't Christianity. So that's my message for the week. Shh, don't tell anybody. I'll see you in 3 weeks. God bless. Be safe. Get your shots. Wash your hands. Wear a mask.